Patch 1.17 went on for weeks and we're all really excited for patch 2.0's changes, only to be given Pack Your Bags being nerfed, which we actually covered in one of our previous nerf videos. Overall the meta didn't really change from the last balance patch, leaving us all very excited for the upcoming balance changes in patch 2.1. By popular demand, we're actually going to take some look at some buffs as well in today's preview prediction video, and these buffs should aim to make some archetypes more viable and shake up the meta in the process. Today we're going to look at some suggested changes basically to make the whole overall game balanced, including some reworks as well as some nerfs like we normally do. This is patch 2.1 preview predictions. This video has been done in collaboration with BomberTV. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on the bell notifications too. So let's dive in. We see that Go Hard is still very consistent even with the nerf, and it hasn't killed the archetype at all, even though we thought it would on paper. Excluding some of the new cards which can be counted on one hand basically, the meta is still pretty much the same as it was, and it's been like this for quite a while. BomberTV guesses that certain cards are so powerful right now that they're basically making any other strategy, new or pre-existing, effectively useless. I believe Monastery of Hirana should be buffed, and the change should be that the Sanctuary spell created by the card will also reduce the cost of the follower recalled by 1. Let's face it, Monastery of Hirana is completely useless right now. I bet loads of you had no idea this card even existed. Maybe in the future we'll see some more interesting combo potential involving playing certain units over and over again using this card, as this was probably how it was intended when it was created. As this card is one of the lowest run rates in the game currently, we can safely say that none of this currently is worth it at the moment. It's not worth using this card. By adding this buff, we're basically reducing the cost of Sanctuary to 0, making play and summon effects basically cheaper to copy, but also adding in a twist. You can discount the same card you recalled, or you could discount a more expensive follower, basically acting as a ramp for a specific card, maybe casting a Commander Ledgerose earlier, or a Dreadway, basically making some more interesting combos that would basically be worth the insane tempo loss of mana that is currently achieved when you cast this spell. Viktor, we believe, should be buffed, and his level up condition should be changed from 8 created cards to 5+ created cards. Viktor is a really interesting champion. The augment strategy allows for you to basically grow some really big attackers from quite an interesting aggressive strategy. We're currently lacking a bit of synergy and support, and Viktor himself has some very interesting combo potentials with his discount abilities, which is why I'd perfectly love to see him get a bit of love and attention in the form of this buff. Currently it's a win the game by even more card, as this effect comes down very late in the game, and by this time that happens you're basically already winning the game, or if you're losing you won't have time to pull off any good combos by the time it happens. But making this discount become active earlier, you can basically build decks in a more interesting way and basically maybe introduce him to the meta. This would make him leveled up basically a win condition or a way of winning, rather than a win by even more like he currently is. I think Heimerdinger's health should be buffed from 3 to 4. Very simply, Heimerdinger is very easily countable by 3 damage spells at the moment, which will become more and more popular with time. Think cards like Get Excited, or the card I know you love the way I say it, Knocks him for 4. This means Heimerdinger can never really be meta at the moment, as he's basically completely countered by these cards, which are very meta present. Even when these spells were not in the meta would simply evolve to counter him with cards that basically just wipe him out quickly before he can do anything. It's true that you can have protective spells in your deck, but this restricts your deck building into specific regions, and he's already quite a big investment in mana, and also requires further protection, so we can see why this champion's not currently successful. It'd be nice to see that he's no longer broken as he was, say, back in patch 1.4, but it'd be nice to see him at least provide an alternate to all the aggro decks that we're seeing at the moment, which are frankly getting a little bit boring. I predict the Grand Plaza will be nerfed and its effect will change to activate it when a card is played instead of summoned. So what do I mean by this? A card that is summoned through a card effect would basically not gain the buff with this new nerf. Only cards summoned in a traditional way, using mana, obviously in the same way you'd summon any other normal monster without a spell or any effects involved, would gain the effect. So it's a very subtle change, but still a significant one. If you're still a little bit confused, I'll explain it now. Grand Plaza is currently generating 3 different tier 1 archetypes: Lucian Hecarim, Grand Navigator, and Grand Targon, while also slowly finding itself in basically any deck that runs Demacia at all. All those decks have a common theme of summoning effects, exploiting this landmark massively. For example, Haunted Relic summons 3 2/2s instead of 1/1s, basically doubling its effect. The same can be said about Double Trouble and Island Navigator. Changing it to just played would still leave this card very strong, but not being so exploitable by a variety of decks, centering the meta around this card. It would still buff the Demacia cards that thrive on the mid-range combat, and not the cards from other regions that simply summon cards and can immediately gain the Grand Plaza's effect, leading to the card basically being exclusive to the archetypes that you want to see it in, like it was originally intended. I predict Zap Sprayfin's cost will be nerfed from 4 to 5, so an increase in 1 mana. The ability to draw specific cards is always quite desirable, and it should come at a cost. Zap Sprayfin is simply too much value for its cost. You're getting a 2/2 elusive card, obviously worth 2 mana, and the ability to draw a card worth more than 2 mana, and obviously with its attune, a spell worth another 1 mana. So if you sum this up, it means you get basically more than 5 mana's worth of value, and you have to take into account that more things like it does the same card, the less other cards you need to draw for all those effects. So basically you're not having to get loads of cards to get these bits and bobs. It just basically also means that there should be a bit of a tax for this amount of value, and which is why I think there should be an increase in the mana cost. With all that said, 5 mana would still be great value, but it'll be a little bit more fairer. This is a particular problem, as we said, as it's very desirable 1 mana spells, and I'm of course talking about spells such as Go Hard, obviously a tune directly giving that 1 extra mana, where some decks like this have popped up. We are still debating if we should nerf the core of the problem, but since Zap has always been part of it, and also part of very strong strategies in the past as well, like Pirate Burn, we decided this first nerf of the auxiliary tool would be a very kind of good starting point. So it'd be interesting to see what the impact of this would be if it was to happen. In patch 2.0, Pack Your Bags was nerfed and has more or less not impacted the Go Hard archetype. Bomb and I strongly believe nerfing Zap Sprayfin is what needed to impact this archetype. I predict Captain Aaron will be nerfed and his ability will change from generating 3 decimates to just 2. Captain Farron is currently way too strong at finishing. Aggro decks use it like a bomb to finish off the game with an insane amount of reach. You just need to deal 8 damage in the early turns and you've already won the game if you manage to reach turn 8 by using the decimates this card generates. Against control decks by that turn, they would accomplish this to stabilise and start to turn back the game, which obviously is impossible given that burn does not take into account board state and it's only actually countered by heal, which not all decks run, and it does not seem to be that effective either at kind of countering this. Against aggro decks, it's even harder, as you still need to gather enough mana to cast all the burn, but still, in a mirror it'd even be harder to get them down to 8 health, and then stall it out and close the game with Captain Farron, whilst this is much easier to reduce them to 12, like it currently is. Remember, it's already an 8/8 card with Overwhelm, which also draws you 3 cards which are good enough to basically be in the main deck by themselves. So this proposed nerf will tone down Pirate Aggro, Ezreal Draven, and burn in general. I think Karma should be reworked and her mana cost should be reduced from 6 to 5 and her stats should be reversed from 4-3 to 3-4. Karma had a great spot in the meta during beta, but it's not been a top tier deck for quite some time now. Most of the time she's played, she's already leveled up, skipping the potential value engine that she has in her base form. Most of the time she's basically simply too fragile and she gets killed very easily from a unit with Challenger or even a 3 damage spell card. By reducing her mana cost, she can be played earlier and generate more value against control mirrors, and swapping her stats fits more in the nature of a control deck by basically making her a little bit more resilient to removals. I don't like the game being too polarising, and Karma as she is right now is simply losing to any deck that runs damage based removals, and therefore she doesn't really have a chance to be good in the current meta. I believe the Slaughter dock should be reworked and it should toss not just one card but toss 2, but the mana should also be bumped up from 3 mana to 4. Deep decks were pretty popular, but right now they've lost consistency as most other decks get upgraded with new cards, while the deep archetype only got this card, which, let's face it, was a little bit underwhelming. The card right now is simply a tempo loss on turn 3 where basically you're going to be losing against aggro decks early on, and just playing this card for 3 mana right now is just making you lose even further and basically making deep archetypes not that great. The deep sea monster summoned once you're deep is a nice bonus, but it comes at a time when you should already be winning. By doubling the speed that you're going deep, you can reach your endgame much faster, and this could potentially make the card have actual meaning in the deck. By increasing its cost, it's a greater tempo loss as you're spending 4 mana, but this card should be used in slower matchups, and by then you'll have a far more impactful time. And there we go guys, what do you think to these predictions? Lots of you were asking for more buffs to be covered, which is why I've been focusing on lots here, as well as a few reworks thrown in for good measure. We covered the same nerf predictions as we wanted previously, as we really want Riot to take note of these. The cards chosen here for balances were as a result of analysis made by BomberTV on winning archetypes at Master, Diamond and Platinum tier with more than 1,000 matches played, as well as looking at the win rate and popularity of specific cards. What cards do you think need a buff and nerf in patch 2.1? I would love to hear in the comments. Up next is Top 10 Decks Patch 2.1. This is the video series you guys simply love the most, and we'll look at a wide range of decks with the best win rates in the next patch. I hope to see you there. I've recently set up an Instagram account, @LawGuides, and I'll be doing a giveaway shortly. Please follow this account for see posts about new videos, and will be in a chance of winning this giveaway. Please remember to like and subscribe, and turn on bell notifications too. See you next time guys.